The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the mad science drill known as Eric Velazquez. My pronouns are also he, him.
All right, so yeah, last week, we mentioned, of course, that this week we'll be doing Frankenstein Created Woman, and you pointed out that, like, this might be the trans Frankenstein movie that we've been hoping for, and it kind of is, and and it actually handles things better than you would expect from when it was made.
Right.
Like, it's not perfect, but it could be way worse.
Right. It's not going to get 100% on the test, but, we got a solid 80.
Yeah.
Okay?
I think this actually...
or at least that's my... As a cis man, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Take it for
Yeah, we don't want to speak too much for the trans community. But yeah, it's not as egregious as one would imagine that like it could be. Like, there's definitely nothing played for humor, and they actually do kind of like a good job of like juggling pronouns in a way that like is thoughtful, at least,
Right.
There's never a point where the creature gets to determine what they would prefer as their pronouns, but when the doctor talks about the creature, there's sort of like an active sort of attempt to choose the correct ones for the situation.
Right. There's definitely a clear delineation when they're referring to different aspects of the creature.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we start off at a guillotine. Hey, we're back here.
Yeah. It felt like it was picking up from the first movie, and like it does feel like...
I honestly thought that's kind of what they were doing.
It does feel like a course correct from the last one. Like, Universal's not part of this one anymore, and it feels like they're kind of like, let's ignore that one and get back on track to what we were doing before. Right. But this time the guillotine is not for Frankenstein. There's a different criminal who kind of has like it's like a perfect example of gallows humor. Like, he's sort of mocking the whole situation. Like, he knows he's going to his death, but he doesn't seem to be taking it super seriously. A priest shows up. He's kind of, he's not like hilariously laughing, but like there's sort of like a dark comedy to the way that he's handling the situation.
Yeah, he's kind of like, okay, this is going to happen. Let's just get on with it. Come on. And to be honest, though, the priest overslept.
Yeah.
That's insulting.
Yeah. This is something that, we get a schedule here, you don't want to be sitting waiting around on your own execution.
And of course, this man doesn't have a true name, but we know his last name is Werner. Otherwise known as the prisoner in the credits.
And it's really unfortunate that the priest is so late, but because of the delay, the prisoner's son arrives, like a child, a young son, shows up, like comes through the woods and just like comes upon his father, like getting ready to be executed. And that's when suddenly, things change, and he's like very serious, and he's like, no, get him away. Like, he can't see this. Like, get him out of here, and hurry, get this over with. Like, I want to protect my kid,
right.
Which,
Yeah, the last thing is I don't want this kid to see me get my head cut in his last moments, right?
So they kind of try to like get the kid out of there and try to rush, and get things done. But the kid pops back up out of the woods and does, see, this execution.
Yeah, right at the last second too, kind of. And the dad's like, "Oh man,
yeah,
you had to pop right back."
Yeah, and then it pretty much it cuts straight to like credits from there. And And one thing also, like the guillotine scene, like, you know, the Hammer movies are kind of known for like bringing gore to like the monster movies, but this movie's pretty tame. Like, you never really see any, like, all you see here is like the guillotine coming back up with blood on the blade. Like, you don't really, you do see the head in the basket, but it's like, you know, I mean, it's, you know, a dummy head. There's not really like blood everywhere or anything. It's,
I imagine for the time it was pretty shocking.
yeah, I mean, and you know, it is creative in terms of like cutting away, cutting back, and like if you're not like a conscious viewer watching, you'll be like, I saw them chop the head off, you know, like, where, you know, whereas like you don't see anything even close to it, but you know, with your imagination, it gets you there.
Right. But don't worry about that, because we're going to get to the gore. We're going to get there.
So after the credits, we immediately cut to like the child Hans, who's now a grown man. And they do
wearing the same outfit.
That's what I was going to say. They do a good job of making sure you know, because he's got the same haircut, same outfit. He's just a grown man.
Right. Everything.
And he's also basically standing where he was. Like, he's just standing there staring up at the guillotine, but now it's all kind of decayed and rotten. So, like, you know, time has gone by. And, you know, he's clearly, like, sort of looking back at, like, this horrible memory that he had. And then he just kind of like you know, kind of goes to the scene of the crime, sort of, so to speak, and like forces those memories back, I guess.
Yeah, and don't worry about it, because we're definitely going to come back to the guillotine a few times.
Oh, yeah.
It's basically a character in its own right.
Yeah, like it is sort of like the third character in this whole series. It just keeps coming back. Particularly in this movie. And so once he kind of like has his sort of reminiscent moment, he runs to this like doctor's office, basically, or lab. And the doctor there is not Dr. Frankenstein, not Peter Cushing. It's this different doctor who we learn is Dr. Hertz. Hans and Dr. Hertz kind of work together, and they like pull this like coffin out of like it looks like a deep freeze sort of thing. Yeah,
I was almost thinking like they dipped it in liquid nitrogen or something like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of on like a track. It almost looks like the way a crematorium is.
Or that too.
Like, where, you know, like the doors open and you slide the big coffin out. It just, instead of it being fire, it's ice. So they open up the coffin, and of course inside is Dr. Frankenstein.
Dun dun dun. Wait, but this is the Frankenstein movie. How could he be frozen dead? Are they going to revive him? Is he the creature? No, of course not.
And so this like science gear, I think maybe are like most like rudimentary gear so far. There's like not much going on here in this lab.
Listen, there's no science wheels. There's no weird bulbs. There's a lot of copper wire, and it actually looks like it would be in someone's workshop. Now, don't get me wrong. We're going to get there eventually. But as of right now...
Yeah, we do get some cool stuff later.
As the aforementioned science drill.
Oh, yeah. But it's almost like jumper cables. They kind of like hook up some stuff, and he just kind of like wakes up, and he's like, oh, how long was I out? And they're like, it's been about an hour. And he's like, but I came back. My soul's still here. Like, everything's fine. And so then we kind of... It's sort of the first time that we get Frankenstein discussing like where the soul comes from. Like, you know, we've had like the brain stuff, you know, where we switch brains and that switches consciousness and stuff. But this time around, he's kind of concerned about like the trick is the soul. If we can keep the soul, trap the soul, that's what will make like a revitalized creature that is, you know, good and conscious and, you know, a real true living, you know, being rather than like a monster. As opposed
to a monster, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, we actually have a little bit of parapsychology, I guess, in this one to go with the science.
Yeah, I'd say so. So yeah, this is sort of his path in this movie, and I think it works. It's kind of an interesting new sort of approach to the whole Frankenstein story. So they decide they're kind of like celebrating that, you know, this early part of the experiment process that they're working on was a success. You know, Frankenstein lived, his soul stuck around. So they decide they're going to get some champagne.
You got to have champagne for such a celebration, right? You've been dead for an hour, you've been revived. You got to get some champagne.
Yeah, or drink a toast to still being around.
Yeah.
And we discover that Dr. Hertz is maybe a bit of an alcoholic. So so he's broke, and he doesn't have, maybe great credit with the pub down the way. And Hans is broke as well. So Frankenstein's like, have him put it on my tab. Get some champagne. Come back. It'll be fine.
Hertz says, no. Here, take it's really cold. Take my coat.
Oh, yes. The this would be the Chekhov's item of this movie.
Right.
The Chekhov's coat is definitely going to come back. Yeah, so he goes down, and it's kind of like it almost looks like a cafe, pub sort of situation. I believe it's also kind of an inn. They refer to the keeper there as like landlord, so I think he's kind of an innkeeper.
You're going to hear that one a lot, because that's all they refer to him as is just landlord.
And so the landlord he's a little skeptical of giving Hans the champagne, even on Frankenstein's tab.
Yeah, he's a little hostile towards Hans.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't like Frankenstein or that whole crew. He's not really fond of them.
Well, yeah, and he's probably not fond of Hans because, well, his dad was a murderer.
And then we find out very shortly after that Hans is also kind of in a relationship with his daughter, and
Christina.
he's definitely trying to prevent that from like being a thing. He does end up giving him some champagne in exchange for the coat. Like he gives him the coat as a
down payment, right?
Yeah. It's almost like pawning the coat. Like I will pay you back, and then you'll give me my coat back. But in the meantime,
I do like how he tries to go, hey, I'll give you this coat for 12 bottles of champagne. It's like, oh, ooh, good try. Oh, no. 3 bottles of champagne. And then the landlord, Cleve, is like, you're getting 1 bottle of champagne, take it or leave it. That's it.
Yeah. So he does take it, but before he leaves, he stops in and speaks with Christina, and she's sort of the damaged person of this movie. We get one, whether it's a hunchback or whatever. There's
the most egregious form of this trope. Like, she is clearly a beautiful woman with a scar over the right side of her face, I believe, maybe the left, maybe I have it backwards. But it's just like a birthmark, apparently. Yeah,
it almost looks like a mild burn scar, but you don't really get to see a good look at it because she wears her hair over her face, kind of like a Veronica Lake kind of deal, like over one eye and kind of covering the scarred area. And she also seems to have a bit of a limp, so some sort of like palsy over one side of her body, similar to Carl in the last movie.
I believe
so we will see that the limp in the next little bit. Hans is about to leave, and then 3 like dandies show up.
That's exactly what I wrote in my notes as well. Because, I mean, that's what they are, right? They're dressed to the nines with the neckerchief. And the
they got like the top hats, the canes. Right. They're very fancy, but they're almost like what they made me think of was like a greaser gangs in a movie or something. Like they're just like punks. They just have fancy coats instead of leather jackets or whatever.
Well, like also the timeline here is all jacked up. Like it almost seems like it could be taking place in the 1800s, but also in the early 1900s. Because they're filtered cigarettes, and that's all the dandies smoke.
Yeah. So they kind of come in and they do what like punk kids do. They sort of like act like they own the place. They keep talking about that like they expect good service, or they'll tell their dads. So presumably their dads are like on some sort of committee or board, because they keep saying like they could close you down if you could lose your license.
Yeah, these are spoiled little aristocrats, is what they are.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they suck.
And that would be Johann, Carl, and Anton. Anton seems to kind of be the leader, even though Johann is apparently the one with the father who can take away the landlord's license. So who knows?
But so their like weird sort of demand is that like they order wine, but they insist that Christina bring it out, and like the landlord is really reticent to let her out. He's like, she's gone, and then like eventually they like go back into the kitchen and see that she's there, and so he can't really deny it anymore.
Right. And by the way, this hideously deformed woman is played by for you Star Trek fans out there of the original series. This is Susan Denberg, who played Magda Kovacs in Mud's Women, the Mud's Women episode. So if you know that episode, she is a model. Okay, there is nothing that doesn't say she's a model because she was a model at this time.
And that makes sense as well, as we'll see a little bit later. But so they, they force her to come out and serve him the wine, and of course has a limp and is carrying like a tray with a wine bottle and 3 full glasses, and she's able to serve one, and she's fine.
Well, they threaten that if she spills any of it, that her dad's going to pay for it.
Yeah. And so, of course, as you would expect, she does end up spilling some in one of the guy's laps, and he immediately, like, jumps up and, acts so, shocked that this happened, as if they didn't, like, engineer this moment to happen. Then, like, Hans has been sort of here this whole time, just, like, standing in the corner, like, in rage. And, of course, as soon as they, like, really go after her, he instantly, like, comes to her defense. Like, he's ready to fight these guys.
And he does. He beats the crap out of all 3 of them.
Yeah, it's impressive. Like, it's a pretty intense fight scene, and like he manages to take on 3 guys. They definitely get some licks in, but he holds his own.
Yeah, but then he says, "I'm tired of this," and he grabs a knife and he slashes Anton's face, and he's like, "All right, now it's a real fight, guys."
Yeah.
But of course, the dandies are saved by some guards.
Yeah. So the police of course arrive, and if they had arrived a few minutes earlier, Hans would have been in pretty good shape, but, he did just pull a knife and cut a guy. So they're sort of forced to escort him out. But, like, the dandies are all like, we want him prosecuted to the full extent of the law and all this, and they're like, the cops actually are like, it looks to me like this was 3 against 1, so, maybe you all need to, like, back off.
Right.
And they actually do kind of, like, I mean, I don't think they're happy about it, but they're sort of forced to back down.
Oh, no, they're going to be brooding for the rest of the night.
Oh, yeah. Then, as Hans is leaving, Frankenstein and Hertz then arrive at the same place, and they want to have dinner, and so they find out that, Hans has left, and so they just kind of, like, sit at a table and have their meal, and...
Well, they're short on cash, right? So they have to do a service for the boys. Hertz is like, or Frankenstein's like, Hertz is going to fix you up. He's going to do first aid for you. You got to give us what? Normally it would be 10 shillings. We'll do 5. And that's obviously, as he looks at Hertz, that this would only be like maybe a shilling service.
Yeah, so they basically get their dinner for free out of the deal. And while they're downstairs, Hans sneaks upstairs into Christina's room, and they kind of have like a really nice moment where he talks about like some of the memories of his father before he was executed. And like how the world sees him sort of as this murderer and this criminal who had to be put to death, but to him it was his dad. Like he has these fond memories of being a kid and spending time with his father.
They went for walks. He told them stories. It was good times.
Yeah, normal, like, healthy father-son stuff. Then, it's leading towards their, moment together. But she's still really uncomfortable about her face, and yep. He's like, you don't have to cover your face for me. Like, I love you, and, you're perfect the way you are. And it's, it's just one of those, like, really sweet moments. It kind of echoes things we've seen in the past where, like, you have this sort of, like, something that is seen as an abomination to this... most people, and when they find that one connection. So, like, she's not monstrous in the way that, like, the creature is monstrous, but, like, clearly, like, after her, run-in with the dandies, like, she's been treated as a monster and probably more than ever feels like one. So, like, you have this special moment where he's just like, you're not a monster. You're perfect.
I mean, she definitely has self-esteem issues because of these a-holes.
Oh yeah, everything about that scene indicates that this is not the first time that they've done this. Like, she's definitely like their favorite target. Oh yeah, like we're bored. What can we do? We can go torment Christina.
Yeah, get drunk and torment Christina. Let's do it.
Yeah. So then, meanwhile, they leave without paying, of course, because they suck. And then they're just kind of like stumbling through the streets, drunk.
You forgot
talking...
the love scene. Christina and Hans actually have an intimate moment where they make love.
Yeah, and it's it's very sweet, and it's as far as like we talked about a movie or two ago that like Hammer has a tendency to be pretty like leering with their female characters, the burgomaster's wife, and this is not like that. It's very tasteful. You don't like it's not a sex scene. Like you know what happens, but they don't like really like linger on it in any way that's like provocative or anything.
Yeah, it's kind of like idealized. It's I would say romantic. I think that's fair.
Yeah, definitely. And then right as that's sort of like reaching its conclusion and they're just sort of like together in bed, like enjoying that like afterglow moment, the dandies end up like outside her window and they're just like drunkenly talking about how, ugly and awful she is. They start singing a song about how terrible she is. Like it's just, truly terrible stuff. Yeah. And like, they're hearing every bit of it.
Yeah, because Christina is holding Hans back, and Hans is like, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. This is it. It's going. But like you said, she kind of brings him back and's like, no, we're here in the moment. So enjoy that.
Yeah, and I think she even like, eventually is just like, love me, and it kind of like fades out. Meanwhile, we end up back with Frankenstein and Hertz. They are back at the lab after dinner, and they're doing this bizarre experiment.
I'm not exactly sure what exact, like they say what happens, but I'm not sure I believe what happens. Because it's the science drill. It's a 3-pronged science drill. They just ram it into a rock, drill into the rock, and it's like, see, it's giving off energy. And it's like, well, you had to have the energy to do the drilling. What? What?
And calling this a drill, like if you've not watched the movie, this is a drill like the size of a car. Basically, it's this huge engine box thing that they're like pushing towards this like hole in the wall, and it's like cutting these 3 holes that then like energy sort of glowing out of.
If you've seen Total Recall, it's the thing that Benny drives. I mean, except his is obviously bigger and more fantastic, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, and seeing the glowing Hertz is like, it's magic. And Frankenstein says, it's only magic until we understand it, which I think is a fantastic line.
Right, that's like some Vancian, like Jack Vance stuff.
Yeah, and there's also like a similar quote from, like, is it Isaac Asimov or Ray Bradbury? There's like a line that's like, there's something about like the line between science and magic is thin and changes over time or something.
I think it's Jack Vance, and it's, what exactly is the phrase? I'm going to find it now. We're putting this on hold. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was Arthur C. Clarke. Arthur C. Clarke said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I definitely agree with that, too.
There we go. Yeah, we danced around all of the the important sci-fi writers except for Arthur C. Clarke, which, yeah, of course. I mean, he's the 2001 A Space Odyssey guy. That's definitely something he would say.
Yep.
But, yeah, it feels like a really fitting line for Dr. Frankenstein to say as well, because that's what all these movies are about, is like really kind of blurring the line between what is science and what is magic, and especially in this one where we're talking about souls. So while they're doing that, then this movie cuts back and forth a lot. It feels like there's like short scenes that go back and forth a lot more than most of the movies we've watched up to this point.
There's a lot of scene whiplash, because I mean they honestly, like the boys or the dandies, right after they finish mocking Christina, they're like, hey, I've worked up a thirst, let's go back to the bar, hopefully the landlord's not there. I mean, they don't say that last part, but that's pretty much the implication. And yeah, it cuts back to them, and they're sneaking into the landlord's, like, his bar tavern thing and drinking all of his alcohol. Like, he's not going to know.
Yeah, so they break in, they're stealing, they're drinking the wine, and then, of course, he ends up coming back. He had left, forgot something, so he's kind of like, shows back up, and they try to hide, and it almost works, but then, like, they end up, knocking something over, making a little noise at the last minute, and he's like, who's there? I heard you, come out. And they come out, and they beat him to death.
Yep.
So, like, if these guys weren't already clearly the villains of this, like, they are fully cemented as the villains at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. But as soon as we have that, we now cut to science satellite dishes.
Yeah, so if the big drill thing wasn't enough, now we've got it's like a table, and there's like two big, like huge, like the old kind that like used to be on people's roofs for TV, like before we got the like direct TV small ones or whatever. Right. But they're like two pointed at each other, and like right in between them there's just a wine glass sitting on the table, and Frankenstein like fires a gun at the wine glass, and the bullet like ricochets and doesn't hit the glass. And so like the idea is I guess these satellite dishes create a force field. And I guess the only way he thought he could test that was to fire a gun and, cause a ricocheting bullet to bounce around the lab.
I do love how Baron Frankenstein just takes no caution for his own safety or anyone's around him. He's like, I'll kill myself. I'll kill my assistants. Anyone around me. They're fair game. As long as it advances my scientific endeavors. By the way, he's invented a force field. I mean, that's a $1 billion idea.
Yeah, and it's just like a means to an end for him.
Right,
like
yeah.
He's not even concerned about that.
In games for many other scientific geniuses in fiction, he's like, no, these are stepping stones. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing more. Because why? We've got to use this force field to trap a soul.
Which also just seems like a bit of a leap. Like, okay, this will keep out a bullet, but also this ethereal thing that we don't really truly understand or know how it works at all. Surely the force field will also keep it in.
Yeah, exactly. No, not counting particle size and maybe what exactly the force field is trapping and how thick that is. And, well, anyway. But the Baron's tired from all the science.
Yeah, so the idea is that this is the way he could trap the soul, work on fixing a body, and then move the soul back into the body, thereby conquering death. And meanwhile, we cut back to, or I guess it's like the next morning now. Hans stayed over with Christina, and he is escorting her to a stagecoach. I don't think it's ever explained. She's going out of town, but they never really say why. No. Or
yeah, what they say is that she's going to another doctor to try and help her get her face fixed.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah, because they do mention several times that's kind of like her dad keeps paying to try to help things, and that nothing's worked, but he's not giving up on her.
Yeah, her perfectly fine face apparently needs to get that repaired.
So he escorts her to a stagecoach. And she leaves, obviously blissfully unaware of what's happened in the middle of the night. But then on Hans's way back into town, he happens to notice there's a crowd of people at the inn and is like, what's going on there? That's strange. And when the police see him, they're like, oh, that's okay. Yeah, let's take him in. He's the son of a notorious murderer, and we know he was there last night.
Well, I mean, even when they pulled the knife out of his hand, he said he was going to kill the landlord for stopping him, right?
Yeah. So he's not in a good place for sure. So they take him in, and they also at this point, bring up the fact that his coat was at the scene of the crime. And in fact, we didn't really mention, but like when the innkeeper came back in, he saw Hans' coat there and like grabbed it and like went to take it as he was leaving. So it's like right on his body, he had it. Yeah. So yeah, things aren't looking so good for Hans at this point.
Right. And they're also like, hey, if you can just tell us anyone that could clear your name, where were you last night? And Hans could tell where he was last night, but he would probably cause Christina some trouble, which I don't really know that that's the case since her father is now dead, and I don't know that anyone else would care.
Yeah, it feels like that thing of like, because they're unmarried and they have to like protect her, virtue or whatever. I feel like there's like an old folk song that's about like a guy who basically this exact plot,
right.
He gets accused of murder and then doesn't do it or, can't admit that he was with her, so he ends up being put to death just to protect this woman that he loves, and that's basically what happens here. There is a trial, and it is just a farce. Like it's he is just obviously doomed. Like, there's nothing anybody's going to say. The dandies, of course, come and lie or just give their side of the story in a skewed way to make him look more guilty. And
right. Hertz doesn't help, though. Hertz is like, no, that's definitely my code. I definitely gave it to Hans. What? Why am I here? Wait a second.
Yeah. He's like clearly drunk. Like, he does just not know what's going on at all.
Yeah.
And then they question Frankenstein as well.
He tries to cover for him pretty good.
Yeah, he's like the only person who tries to help, but you can tell he's just like annoyed. Like, why am I here? This is dumb. I've got better things to do. Right. But Hans is a very capable, honest, great person. Like, he would never do this.
Can we talk about how the Baron's credentials have increased even more? Like, so not only is he a doctor of science, he's also a doctor of law and physics. Okay, and a psychologist.
And there's like a great joke where they're like, and you're also a witch, and he was like, well, there's no doctorate in witchcraft.
Yeah, you would get a doctorate for being for witchcraft, right?
And he was like, if there was such a thing, I'm sure I'd have that as well.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so Frankenstein's testimony is not really enough to help. But the judge kind of does give him one last chance of like, if this is your last opportunity, just tell us, give us an alibi.
Where you were.
And if it checks out, you can save yourself. But, again, he doesn't say anything, so he's found guilty, and they're like, okay, you're going to be guillotined tomorrow.
Right.
There's no like appeals process. It's a quick turnaround on this.
So maybe sometimes it's okay to kiss and tell. Not all the time. But when they'll save your life.
And the thing about this being such a quick turnaround is, like, if Christina were to get back into town, like, if she were in town, she would be like, no, he was with me. It's fine. Yeah. Like, but she doesn't get the chance to do that. So Frankenstein, like, before they even guillotine Hans, he's already talking to Hertz, like, okay, what we got to do is, as soon as they chop off his head, we got to get the body home, like, while it is still warm. We got to get it inside our saddle.
And Hertz is like, that's one of our friends. And, of course, Frankenstein's like, he, like everyone else, is material. Like, that, he doesn't say that outright, but that's exactly what he's mentioning.
Yeah, he kind of he tries to like play it off like, well, but yeah, we got to protect him, we got to try to save him, but he also does say something along the lines of like, bodies are easy to come by, souls are not.
Right.
So this is a rare opportunity that we could get a fresh soul, straight off the guillotine.
You got to get it back here in 1 hour tomorrow, Hertz. That's your job.
Yeah, and Hertz is kind of like, how am I going to do that? And he's like, you're the town doctor. You know some stuff. You can figure this out.
Mm-hmm. Boy, does he
and sure enough, yeah. So he like goes to the prison, like the main prison guard, and the prison guard's like, no, I'm not going to give you the body. And he's like, that girl you brought by a couple years ago who seemed to be unmarried and pregnant, and that kind of just went away. I wonder what your wife would. Does she know about that whole situation?
Yeah, and also like, the STI we blamed on food poisoning. Yeah, does your wife know about that? She could.
Yeah, he's got like not just if the abortion's not enough, we've also got gonorrhea. Is it gonorrhea or syphilis? Like
I don't know, and I'm not looking at it.
But like, yeah, they. He's got a lot of dirt on this guy, and the guy's like, all right, fine, you got an hour, we'll get the body to you, but like, no funny stuff. If the body comes back looking weird, if you've chopped it all up, you're gonna be in trouble, because I'm not gonna take the fall on that.
Yeah, because we know what Frankenstein's about, right? I mean, somehow he's still operating freely, but we know what he's about.
Oh yeah. And so of course then, like, in a perfect repeat of the beginning of the movie, Christina arrives back in town, like, just in time to see Hans executed. Like, if she'd arrived 5 minutes sooner, she probably could have saved him. Right. But no, or 5 minutes later, she wouldn't have had to see it. Yeah. But right when she arrives, it happens, and so she has to witness that, and then basically finds out, that this is basically not her fault, but she feels like it's her fault, because if she'd been there, she could have stopped things. Yeah. So she goes and jumps off a bridge. So then we end up in another one of those sort of like back and forth scenes where we get Frankenstein and Hertz, they receive the body, Hans's body, and they...
I don't want to say this, or well, I kind of do. That's why I'm bringing it up. The guard, as they leave Hans's body, literally tells Hans, or asks Hertz, I'm sorry, if he will go sporting with the body. And I was like, oh no, did he just imply that Hertz is going to do something?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like everybody knows Frankenstein is up to some weird stuff, but they don't really know what weird stuff.
Right.
And it's like they're just drawing their own conclusions, and it may be even worse than what he actually is up to.
It's like, no, we're just going to create abomination against God, that's all, and,
No funny stuff.
Yeah. Come on, we're with Frankenstein, you know what's going on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we get sort of like a back and forth where, like, Frankenstein and Hertz, and, like, I agree, Hertz and Hans, like, what were they thinking? Like, it's easy to get those mixed up. But, so Frankenstein and Hertz are working on Hans. Meanwhile, we also have a group of, like, townspeople down by the river who find Christina's body. And it kind of goes back and forth of, like, we got the science, we got, like, the search party sort of deciding what to do. And it ultimately results in, like, them, you got the science dishes, they're glowing. We assume that, like, the soul is, trapped. And they sort of, like, move it into this, like a box almost. It's like a steel box with, like, a glass peephole or something.
I will say this. If you're sensitive to sounds, like, I didn't expect this. I actually got a little sick from, like, the whob, whob, whob. Like, it was at such a weird frequency that I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. I don't like that. So just be aware of that.
It's like the binaural beats thing that used to be, like, a big thing years and years ago that could, like, make you disoriented.
It kind of was, yeah.
But so they trap the soul in this box, and apparently a soul just looks like an orb. It's just like a glowing orb.
It's that thing in the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. You open up, that's where the soul thing came from.
Yeah. So meanwhile, the townspeople arrive. They've got Christina's body, and they're like, "Doctor, is there anything you can do?" And, like, Hertz is like, "No, she's dead. I'm a doctor."
Yeah. There's no fixing dead, except for Frankenstein's like, oh, yes, there is.
Yeah, like, Hertz just completely forgot about who he works for, and Frankenstein's like, oh, yeah, we could totally help with this. Yeah, just leave the body. We'll get it straightened out. Mm-hmm. So then we kind of get, like, it feels like there would have been a montage here, but there's just kind of not. Like, it just sort of cuts to some time
like
has
6
passed.
months later. He's like, and 6 months later, we're going to fix her. She'll be perfect. And then that's what
And so now, like, Christina, her face is, pristine now. So, like, this is why we had to get a model.
Yeah, she's blonde instead of auburn-haired.
For no particular reason. Like, well, they just decided, well, since she's pretty now, she's obviously got to be a blonde.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And... no longer has a limp and everything, and, like, somewhere along in the course of this, they've also transferred Hans's soul into the body.
Right.
And this is where we get into some of the sort of, like, the trans sort of, like, stuff where it's like you have this person who wakes up and doesn't really have any memory, so they just kind of take to calling this person Christina, and they use her to describe them. It's
the body.
It's basically, it is Christina because until proven otherwise, they're just going by what they see, which is, a female presenting body, who they previously knew as Christina. And, because this person has no memories, they can't really contradict anything and just kind of, like, go with what they're being told. Like, okay, if you say I'm Christina, if you say you knew me, then I guess I'm Christina, and I guess, this is, they kind of tell her, like, we healed your face, like, you used to be disfigured, and now you're better, but, like, at the same time, Frankenstein's a little, like, reluctant to let her look in a mirror at first.
Right.
And eventually, like, Hertz does get out a mirror, and they're just kind of like, okay, this is you, you're healed, this is what you look like. there's not really like a strong response from that. It is kind of still like, you know, the amnesia thing.
Right.
Like they're just like, okay, I guess this is me. So then they decide to take Christina to the gallows to see if that might like jog any sort of memory.
Man, how great! What a great idea is that? Just let's go to the site of your trauma. But,
yeah, which again feels like a repeat of like the moment at the beginning when like adult Hans is looking at the, you know, seeing where his father died. But like using the guillotine as a memory jog doesn't exactly, because I feel like the thing is Frankenstein is trying to figure out like, who is this
Right,
really?
yeah.
Like, I don't even know if this is Christina or
is
Hans in here. But the guillotine is a point of trauma for both of them. You know,
Right.
like Hans saw his dad die there, also was killed there himself. Christina saw, you know, her love Hans die there. So either way, this is gonna be like a flashpoint for them. Yeah. But like you do sort of, you see like sort of like a flashback of like Hans's father being killed, and so that's when Frankenstein says he remembers. Yep. And you know, Hertz is like, what? And Frankenstein's like, his soul is in her body. So again, like, you know, because of the amnesia, we don't get a lot of input from them about what they actually want out of this situation. But Frankenstein is still trying to designate, like, okay, so there is the Christina of the situation, and there's also the Hans. Yeah. So, you know,
two souls, one body. What could go wrong, right? Yeah.
So like it's not exactly like a trans narrative, but it kind of is in a way, and you know, it's yeah. So then we because now like the person that is being called Christina still is sort of like had these jogged memories. We then get like, it's like, I guess that night you have Anton, who is just like walking around. He's like outside, just kind of like wandering the streets.
He's getting ready to go party with his friends.
Yeah, and he hears a voice, and the voice is Hans's voice. And so he kind of like in fear runs to the inn.
Yeah, I mean he's getting attacked by a ghost at this point in his mind, right?
Yeah, and so then of course, you know, when his friends see him, there's the line that's in every sort of horror movie where somebody sees a ghost. Somebody has to say, "You look like you've seen a ghost." So he's kind of like, he's shaken up, and he just wants to get like, you know, trashed with his friends. He's just like, let's get drunk, let's not think about it, it's fine.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they drink, but like eventually the other two guys are like, all right, like it's enough. Like we've had enough to drink. It's time for bed. Like, you know, this is later than we usually hang out or whatever. And Anton's
like, no, you cannot go.
Don't go. He's definitely like, you know, cowards. You need to stay. But of course, he's the one that's afraid. And they eventually, you know, they do get tired. They leave. Then, like,
he even tries to get the new landlord to play a card game with him.
Yeah, and he flips over a card, and it's the Ace of Spades, which I feel like is not really. Yeah, it's not. I don't know if that's a thing that like people still like. It has been like a symbol of like bad luck and stuff, but I don't know that a lot of people know that reference anymore. I may be wrong, but I don't feel like it comes up in tropes as much now as it you know did in the past.
Right. But that's what it means. It means bad luck.
So and like there's definitely like when you see it, you'll notice that it's trying to tell you something because it kind of like zooms in on. There's like a dun 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 kind of like, oh no, it causes him to like spill his drink in like fright. And you know, of course, then the innkeeper,
like, get out. You're too drunk.
Yeah, you know, you're cut off. Get out of here. And he happens.
That's when we meet Christina.
Yeah. So. He runs into her, does not recognize her because, you know, obviously her face is, you know, fixed up. Her hair is blonde. She doesn't have like the covered up side of her face because, you know, she's not, you know, self-conscious anymore. Her hair's back, you know.
But she's also in full model mode with like, you know, a really nice dress and all that, all the face made up, everything.
Like, yeah, and she's like obviously flirting with him, like, you know, doing like the femme fatale thing. And you know, it kind of becomes like a, you know, why don't we go back to your place kind of thing. And she's like, I know a place, it's nearby, like we could go there. And she goes to her former home, like that is now abandoned because her, Christina and Christina's father are dead, as far as everyone knows.
Right, and Anton's, of course, he's like, I don't know about that. Maybe we don't go to that one. But of course, the little head does the thinking, and he's just like, yeah, fine. What's the worst that could happen, right?
Yeah. And then even like because he just has to just be the worst. He's like, oh yeah, I used to know somebody who lived here, but she was awful and ugly, so we don't need to talk about her or whatever. And
by the way, here's another shout out to Susan Denberg. Like every time one of the quote the dandies, as we're calling them, like touches her, she like turns her head and she's visibly disgusted. Like she's like, this guy touching me. I do like her. Like, I'm surprised she didn't do more.
Yeah, her acting in this is really great because it's subtle. Like, you see, like, little tells that she hates them and doesn't want to be there. But, like, she also does a good job. I mean...
She's got a job to do, in a way, right?
Yeah, this feels like a sort of a trope that you see often in, like, rape revenge movies where, like... the woman ends up using her sexuality as, like, a weapon to get back at the people who hurt her. It's a trope because it's always just super satisfying, these idiot men who have treated her as nothing but an object this whole time, then like she can use that like objectification,
right?
As a tool in her power, and it's very satisfying.
It's the ironic punishment. You're what got you into this mess is what's getting you, or what you inflicted on someone else is what's getting you killed. And that's what's happening.
Yeah, and I mean, like, people just, everybody loves that. I mean, like, that's been a thing since, like, at least Dante's Inferno, if not before, like...
Oh, yeah, that's Bible
it's
stuff,
just... You gotta love people being punished for doing something by, with the
thing they did.
With their sin, it's just... You can't beat it. She kind of, like, goes in the next room, like, let me freshen up sort of deal. And she hears... we hear Han's voice... And it just says, like, kill. And so it's like, I don't know that Anton is hearing it. I think in this case, it's like it's sort of like within Christina's mind. So, it's kind of like, that's like the sort of like two souls, one body thing going on there. And so, in fact, she does like go in to kill Anton. And this movie does a lot of like, the thing in like older movies where like when there's going to be a sex scene, they'll like cut to like, a train going through a tunnel or something as like a metaphor or whatever. They keep doing this thing where like she has a knife, or it's like a cleaver, and she's gonna like kill him, and then it cuts to just a shot of the guillotine. Right. And like, so you get the idea, like he has been killed, and then it just like cuts to like it's the next morning, and she's just like hanging out, serving. She's got breakfast ready for Hertz. He's just like, oh, thanks. He's all happy, and like Frankenstein comes in and is like, oh, everybody seems like up and chipper. Like, what's going on? It's just a very like normal domestic moment with the three of them.
Yeah. But then we cut back to Carl, and who's now worried because his friend Anton was killed.
Yeah. So like it's like the two surviving guys, one is more frightened than the other. They're both kind of mourning Anton, but one of them's just like, these things happen or whatever. But, Carl's like, I think something's up, like,
yeah,
maybe, we're being punished for what we did, like we're responsible for all this death. Like, something's coming back to get us.
Anton
for it.
was
like,
clearly
I don't know
freaking
what.
out. So something's going on. He may not have mentioned Hans, but it's like we goofed 6 months ago.
Oh, yeah. So Hans is by him, or not Hans. I don't know why I keep saying Hans. Carl.
Yeah, Johann leaves. By the way, you don't learn about
Johann leaves.
You don't learn Johann's name until an hour and 22 minutes in. So long after this, this guy has no name until an hour and 22 minutes in. Also, I don't know what that weird chicken eagle thing was behind Carl at an hour and 50 minutes. I don't know. I just saw this thing that looks like a kind of like an eagle, and I guess its talons were extended, but it doesn't have the wings or anything else. It's just the front half of this thing. And I'm like, it kind of looks like a T-Rex. I don't know why I was drawn to that, but I was like, what is this thing?
I totally missed it.
You should go back and look for it.
That's totally the kind of thing that you would
know
notice, and I
it
wouldn't.
ADD's fun. All right. But yeah, so as soon as Johann leaves, Christina comes in, and she's on the prowl once more.
Yeah, so again, kind of the same deal. We hear Hans' voice again, and this time it's even more explicit. It's not just kill. It's like says, like, kill him, Christina. And so, again, like, indeed she does. Like, and this time it's great. Like, it cuts to wood being chopped.
Yeah, by the way, this cleaver is huge. Like, this is the...
Yeah, it's intense. Yeah. So, then, like, it cuts to, like, the next morning... And Carl's body is found. This all takes place in the inn, So again, like it's sort of like landmarks from Christina's life. We had Christina's home, and now we've got like the inn that her and her father owned and worked in. But Carl's body is found, but next to him, written in blood, is Hans.
They imply though that Carl wrote this, and I don't know about you, but getting a cleaver, presumably through the head, they don't really go into that detail. You're not going to be able to write in blood when you're getting struck in the head with a cleaver. I don't think that's...
Yeah. Because the way like they cut to the wood chopping and stuff, like I got the impression that he was either decapitated or like, seriously...
Right.
Like, this isn't the kind of thing where he's laying there bleeding out for a while. This is like an instant
I'll
kill.
write my killer's name in blood now. But if he didn't do it, then that means Christina did it. But why would she do it? I guess she may be sending a message. Maybe that's what it is. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, that could be that. But so instantly, of course, the town is like, well, if Carl wrote this to tell us who his killer is, and Hans is still alive, we decapitated Hans, and he's still around to there's a lot of Hans, Johann, and Hertz.
Hertz.
They're just asking for us to have trouble with this.
They planned this in advance.
But yeah, so they're like, this is kind of where they're like, oh wait, we did let Frankenstein mess around with that body for a minute after we killed him.
We have a Frankenstein here, guys. Come on. Yeah.
So maybe Hans was revived. Yeah. And so they go to Frankenstein and they're like, did you do this? And he's like, so this is the whole witchcraft thing again. You think I just like brought this decapitated corpse back to life? That's crazy. That obviously didn't happen. Go dig him up. Like, you'll see. Like, I didn't do anything. And so they do. And like, this should have been a slam dunk for Frankenstein, like, because he didn't do anything with the body. Like, but
the head's missing.
It turns out that the head's missing and like the coffin's been kind of tampered with recently.
Yeah.
So they're like, that's interesting.
It doesn't take long before we find out Christina took it.
They cut to Christina's in her bedroom and she's got Hans' head like
on a post,
impaled on one of her bedposts, and she's just like talking to him.
Right.
So, and then meanwhile we see that Johann, the last surviving dandy, is trying to get out of town. He's the smart one, and he's like, okay, something's up. I got to cut and run while I still can, or else the same thing's gonna get me.
Right. Yeah, he knows what's up. He's like, I'm dead next. Hans is back.
Yeah. But then, like, at the same time, so he gets to a coach, and Christina is just there. And, she's, like, starting to flirt with him. And he, because he's sort of the smart one, is like, you look familiar. Right. And she's like,
can't quite place it.
Yeah, I think we knew each other way back in the day. And, like, she obviously doesn't tell him who she is, but she she doesn't deny that they knew each other at one time.
Right.
And then meanwhile, we're cutting back to Frankenstein, like, figuring out the situation and, weirdly just, like, going to the police and being like, so here's what's up. So, like, I definitely, there's a reason that Hans's head's missing, and it's because I transplanted his soul into the dead body of Christina, so... Probably, Hans might be on, like, a killing spree for revenge since, like, the dandies sort of, like, are responsible for his death,
Right. I do like how he just drops that bomb, by the way. He could have been like, nah, these guys clearly did it. But he's like, no. Now, after I've gotten Hans' body, or Hans' soul in Christina, Yeah, they did the murder.
And the police kind of take it in stride, and they're like, all right, I guess we gotta, like, you know, track down the Christina body containing the Hans soul,
right?
And, you know, bring it to justice.
Baron's like, no, you're gonna destroy this thing, the thing I've created. No. Then we have Action Baron again. Like, he bolts up the stairs, like shrugging off his coat as they try to apprehend him, and he climbs out of his window, and it's like, he's done this before. There's no way he hasn't.
Oh, yeah.
Because he knows exactly where to step and where to jump to get down into this little area, to get into his carriage and ride off.
Yeah, it's definitely the same sort of like Errol Flynn, Indiana Jones thing that we've seen a couple times from Peter Cushing. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the coach has stopped. There's like an issue with a wheel or something.
Yeah. One of the horse's shoes fell off is what the driver says.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And so, like, the carriage driver's like, yeah, well, I'll get a new shoe, but this is going to take a little bit, so, you know, you can wait, or, you know, whatever. And Christina's like, I actually know where we are. We're kind of close to where we're trying to go. I know a shortcut through the woods. Yeah. Like, why don't we take this little shortcut? Yeah.
We could have a
little
nice
picnic along the way. I've got... Yeah, so, and, you know, even though Johann, like, knows that he's, like, trying to flee to safety, he's like, yeah, sure, I'll go through the woods with this stranger.
Yeah, these guys make the same mistake so many times.
Yeah, she, like, gathers her stuff and then almost forgets, oh, wait, I've got my hat box. That's very important. I need my hat box. And so she grabs that. They got the picnic basket, the luggage, and the hat box, and sort of head into the woods.
Well, she also pays off the driver, hinting that, you know, this was planned. This was all pre-planned.
Yeah, you definitely get the indication that, like, yeah, she arranged for this horseshoe incident that may or may not actually have happened at all, you know. The carriage driver may have just stopped and been like, oh, horseshoe, you know. But so, yeah, they go off into the woods, and, you know, next thing we know, we're, like, in the middle of the picnic. And she then admits who she is, you know, says that...
well, this is when he's drunk and full of food, so he's basically half awake at this point.
Yeah, and she, you know, is like, yeah, you know me, I'm Christina, the girl that you mocked and, you know, insulted, and, you know, who basically died as a result of things that you put in motion, and, you know, then she pulls out a knife and, you know, stabs him to death.
Right. I honestly thought Johann was going to get away. Like, he was going to be the one that they were like, no, we're going to redeem this guy at the end. No. She just stabs this guy multiple times. Like, and it's actually satisfying. It really is.
Yeah, and then, like, immediately then, like, Frankenstein shows up. For a second, like, he shows up and she's, like, holding a head.
You think it's Johann.
And, like, speaking to it. Yeah, at first I was like, oh, she has decapitated Johann. But then, like, you get a little closer look, and it's like, oh wait, no, this head is more decayed. Yeah, it's a little bit more decayed than Johann's would be. This is Hans. She's carrying Hans around in the hat box.
Mm-hmm. Fitting, I guess.
Yeah. So you know, she's kind of and so I guess it almost like at this point, Christina has become Christina, and she's carrying the Hans part of her personality in the head, you know.
It's kind of like reverse Psycho, the movie.
Yeah.
Whereas Norman Bates had his mom, Christina has Hans.
Yeah, that's definitely apt. And then there's kind of like this moment where, like, Frankenstein, you know, he sees this happen, and he kind of knows basically what has to happen at this point, and he kind of like half-heartedly is like, you know, wait, you know, we can still make this all right. It'll be okay. But when she just, like, walks away, you know, there's just kind of a knowing nod, like, okay, yeah, I know what needs to happen, and I can't stop. He doesn't try to stop it. Right. And she just walks to the river and jumps in again. And, you know, so this movie is a lot about, like, things repeating. So we have, like, yeah, you know, Hans' father dying at the guillotine, then Hans dying at the guillotine, and, you know, Hans seeing his father die, and Christina seeing Hans die. And again, you know, we've got Christina, you know, drowning herself twice for grief, you know, the same grief basically 2 times over. It's sort of an abrupt, you know, she jumps in the river and then, like, it's the end. So, you know, it kind of has a little bit of like that universal thing of, like, you know, knocking the characters off the board and just immediately like having the end. But it does still feel a little bit more complete because you have that moment with Frankenstein where he sort of acknowledges that like this is what needs to happen.
Right. And he's walking away dejected. He's like, oh man, another failed experiment effectively. And they play that sad music over the background. So it was an abrupt ending, but it wasn't really an abrupt ending.
Yeah, it didn't feel abrupt. Like, it does kind of end quickly, but it felt like it earned that quick ending.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And, so then, that's the end. And it definitely, like, as we said, like, it's not exact. Like, I feel like I would be interested to see, like, I tend to not try to do much reading about, like, what critics and stuff say about these before we talk about them, because I don't really want to... Yeah. I want our discussion to kind of go our own way. But I do feel like after we get done here, I'm probably going to see if there is any sort of like writing from like trans fans and trans critics about this movie. I feel like it might be one that gets kind of like latched onto as being, because there's not a lot of representation. I mean, that's a big thing with queer theory is that like sometimes you got to find the representation in like the subtext because you don't have a lot of representation if you don't dig for it. So I do feel like there's probably some interesting readings about this, and I would definitely encourage anybody who's interested in that to look into it. Because I think there's definitely got to be some stuff out there from some people a little bit more qualified to talk about that than us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like as far as we can say, I do think there definitely could be a worse version of this movie that sort of plays with humor in that, and like some of these even the Hammer movies, they do have some elements of humor, but this is never played for comedy.
No.
As best as Frankenstein can, he seems to try to like respect, or try to understand what's going on and respect what he thinks is going on, I guess.
Yeah. Weirdly, I would say this is one of the Frankenstein movies with the most heart. Pardon the pun. But
yeah, I agree. I really do think, definitely of the Hammer movies, I think this has been my favorite so far. And I would put it pretty high up there. I would, like, as of right now of what we've talked about, I would put it in my top 5, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Like, it definitely had a lot of exciting moments. It had a lot of scary moments. I'm a little bit of a gore hound, so it had a little bit enough of that to keep me happy. And yeah, this is pretty good.
Yep. So that is that, I guess. And of course, we are heading into the fourth? The next installment in the Hammer series, which is
Frankenstein Must Be
fifth.
Destroyed.
Yes, Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, which again is, such a cool title. Like, you gotta love it. So we will see more Peter Cushing. See what his next attempt looks like. And I think one thing, I don't know that we've mentioned this, but I believe all of these movies so far have been directed by the same person, which I think is pretty interesting. We may want to dig into that a little bit more in the next one. I'm pretty sure Terence Fisher has directed all of them up to this point, and I think he does the next one as well. Mm-hmm. So I guess we will see you next week for Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed.
And also, don't forget to get us on the socials at the Frankencast on Instagram and on Twitter, as well as thefrankencast@gmail.com.
We'd love to hear from you. We're starting to get a little bit of a response from people, and it's nice just talking to people what you think, what you're liking, what you're not. If there's a movie you really want us to cover, we'd love to, we've got a schedule, but we're playing around with it. I'm moving stuff around all the time. So, if something really exciting is going on, we'd love to hear about it. And, if you like what we're doing, we'd love for you to rate on whatever platform you're using,
YouTube, Spotify.
The Apple one, I know that like kind of goes to a lot of different podcatchers. So, if you use Apple Podcasts, I think that probably goes the furthest. But, obviously if you don't, wherever you are, we love to get those rates and reviews and all that. 'Cause, it definitely helps other people hear. And we want to keep building this our Frankencast empire, so to speak. Like we want to do more. Like we We're really enjoying this, and we hope you guys are too.
Help us to spread our influence across the world. And as always, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velazquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.